Welcome to Evidence. Today we are going to be reading a story, but first up we are going to be doing a Bible verse that we copied today, and I'm going to be reading it, so it's been a long time since I've read something to live stream, but I hope you guys enjoy. Next we are going to be doing devotions with Daniel. No. Oh. Okay. First up, we are going to be doing this. Second, we are going to be reading the Bible, and then we are going to be doing synopsis with Kimberly. Maybe. Unless Ed wants to do the synopsis. And then we are going to be reading the Return of the King. I hope you guys enjoy, and make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and bell numbers of the video. Here is my twin. I don't know. Romans 5:5. Now, hope does not disappoint because the love of God has been poured out in our hearts by the Holy Spirit who was given to us. Now it's time for Dad with the Bible chapter instead of, no, not a chapter.
It is a chapter.
It's a chapter instead of just one verse. I hope you enjoyed Daddy.
Okay.
Dad jokes champ, I guess. Not Dad anymore.
Hello, how is everyone doing? We're on Acts chapter 3.
He's back, but he's also front.
Okay, so we're on Acts chapter 3, and this is the English Standard Version. Let me begin. Now, Peter and John were going up to the temple at the hour of prayer, the 9th hour. And a man lame from birth was being carried, whom they laid daily at the gate of the temple that is called the Beautiful Gate, to ask alms of those entering the temple. Seeing Peter and John about to go into the temple, he asked to receive alms. And Peter directed his gaze at him, as did John, and said, "Look at us." And he fixed his attention on them, expecting to receive something from them. But Peter said, "I have no silver and gold, but what I do have I give to you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise up and walk." And he took him by the right hand and raised him up, and immediately his feet and ankles were made strong. And leaping up, he stood and began to walk, and entered the temple with them, walking and leaping and praising God. And all the people saw him walking and praising God, and recognized him as the one who sat at the beautiful gate of the temple asking for alms. And they were filled with wonder and amazement at what had happened to him. While he clung to Peter and John, all the people, utterly astounded, ran together to them in the portico called Solomon's. And when Peter saw it, he addressed the people, "Men of Israel, why do you wonder at this, or why do you stare at us, as though by our own power or piety we have made him walk? The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the God of our fathers, glorified his servant Jesus, whom you delivered over and denied in the presence of Pilate when he had decided to release him. But you denied the holy and righteous one and asked for a murderer to be granted to you, and you killed the author of life, whom God raised from the dead. To this we are witnesses, and his name, by faith in his name, has made this man strong, whom you see and know, and the faith that is through Jesus has given the man this perfect health in the presence of you all. And now, brothers, I know that you acted in ignorance as did also your rulers. But what God foretold by the mouth of all the prophets, that his Christ would suffer, he thus fulfilled. Repent therefore and turn back, that your sins may be blotted out, that times of refreshing may come from the presence of the Lord, and that he may send the Christ appointed for you, Jesus, whom heaven must receive until the time for restoring all things about which God spoke by the mouth of his holy prophets long ago. Moses said, the Lord God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your brothers. You shall listen to him in whatever he tells you, and it shall be that every soul who does not listen to that prophet shall be destroyed from the temple. And all the prophets who have spoken from Samuel and those who came after him also proclaim these days. You are the sons of the prophets and of the covenant that God made with your fathers, saying to Abraham, and in your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. God, having raised up his servant, sent him to you first to bless you by turning every one of you from your wickedness. That is the end of chapter 3 of the book of Acts, and we will continue with chapter 4 tomorrow. And I hope that God is blessing the reading of his word. So, we're going to talk about what's been going on in the Lord of the Rings. So, in the last chapter, we had the siege of Gondor, and they burst open the gate, and they burned the entire city down to the ground, and no one survived. The end. The Dark Lord wins. Is that not how it happened?
What happened was, yes, the whole city burned down, but then Giant Kitty stomped on him. Stomp. He stomped.
Okay.
That.
Okay, here's Kimberly to say how it really happened.
You both have even worse accounts than the other. JJ, as you can see, I have my hair curled because Mom braided it, and that's really nice. What actually happened was they got attacked. They're practically losing, and then Faramir is like mortally wounded and about to die. So his dad's like, oh no, it's the end of the world. My second son is dying, and I'm not gonna have any heirs, and so I might as well just die because my city's gonna get burnt to the ground. So he takes it's Pippin with him. He takes Pippin and says, okay, now you fetch some wood, and you fetch some oil and a torch, and then burn me to a crisp with my son.
Who isn't dead?
Yeah, who isn't dead yet.
Not dead yet.
And then he goes upstairs and he talks to the guard who saw them enter, and the guard's like, oh no, Faramir's dead. And he's like, no, he's not dead yet. Then he's dying and they're gonna bury him. No, he's not dead yet. And then he says, hey, if the king asks for wood and oil, don't give it to him. He's about to kill himself and his son.
And the guard was like,
Wait.
I have to
It's
report
not the
to
king, the steward.
Yeah.
It's the steward.
Yeah, it is the steward. I keep forgetting. But he's basically got the power
He's the guy
of the king.
in charge.
Yeah. And then the guard's like, but if my orders don't come from the steward, then where do they come from? And he's like, Gandalf is the only sane one here. Which is very true. And so Pippin goes over to find Gandalf, and he sees him in the middle of a battle with the Ringwraith, who is wearing a crown, but he takes off his cloak and everything. But they couldn't see him. They could see the crown on him, though. It was really weird. And Dad had to leave off somewhere around there.
That was the end of the chapter.
Yeah.
Daniel missed all of it.
Yeah, Daniel missed
You
all
were
of it.
out like a light and snoring.
Hey.
No. I can't believe you fell asleep in gym today.
Hello again! I am back, and I'm also front. All right, so
That joke never gets old.
we are on chapter 5, The Ride of the Rohirrim. If you don't remember, because Kimberly didn't mention it, here's the last paragraph of the previous chapter. And as if in answer, there came from far away another note. Horns, horns, horns! In dark Mindoluin's side they dimly echoed, great horns of the north wildly blowing. Rohan had come at last. And that leads us up to chapter 5, the ride of the Rohirrim. Let me begin. It was dark, and Merry could see nothing as he lay on the ground rolled in a blanket. Yet, though the night was airless and windless, all about him hidden trees were sighing softly. He lifted his head. Then he heard it again. It's a sound like faint drums in the wooded hills and mountain steps. The throb would cease suddenly, and then be taken up again at some other point, now nearer, now further off. He wondered if the watchman had heard it. He could not see them, but he knew that all around him were the companies of the Rohirrim. He could smell the horses in the dark, and could hear their shiftings and their soft stamping on the needle-covered ground. The host was bivouacked on or in the pine woods that clustered about Eilenach Beacon, a tall hill standing up from the long ridges of the Druadan forest that lay beside the great road in East Anorian. Tired as he was, Merry could not sleep. He had ridden now for 4 days on end, and the ever-deepening gloom had slowly weighed down his heart. He began to wonder why he had ever been so eager to come, when he had been given every excuse, even his lord's command, to stay behind. He wondered, too, if the old kings knew that he had been disobeyed, and was angry. Perhaps not. There seemed to be some understanding between Dernhelm and Elfhelm, the marshal who commanded the Eroed in which they were riding. He and all his men ignored Merry and pretended not to hear if he spoke. He might have been just another bag that Dernhelm was carrying. Dernhelm was no comfort. He never spoke to anyone. Merry felt small, unwanted, and lonely. Now the time was anxious, and the host was in peril. They were less than a day's ride from the outwalls of Minas Tirith that encircled the townlands. Scouts had been sent ahead. Some had not returned. Others, hastening back, had reported that the road was held in force against them. A host of the enemy was encamped upon it, 3 miles west of Amondine, and some strength of men was already thrusting along the road, and was no more than 3 leagues away. Orcs were roving in the hills and woods along the roadside. The king and Eomer held council in the watches of the night. Merry wanted somebody to talk to, and he thought of Pippin, but that only increased his restlessness. Poor Pippin, shut up in the great city of stone, lonely and afraid. Merry wished he was a tall rider like Eomer, and could blow a horn or something and go galloping to his rescue. He sat up, listening to the drums that were beating again, now nearer at hand. Presently he heard voices speaking low, and he saw dim, half-shrouded lanterns passing through the trees. Men nearby began to move uncertainly in the dark. A tall figure loomed up and stumbled over him, cursing the tree roots. He recognized the voice of Elfhelm, the marshal. "I am not a tree root, sir," he said, "nor a bag, but a bruised hobbit. The least you can do in amends is to tell me what is afoot." "Anything that can keep so in this devil's murk," answered Elfhelm, "but my lord sends word that we must set ourselves in readiness. Orders may come for a sudden move." "Is the enemy coming, then?" asked Merry anxiously. "Are those the drums? I began to think I was imagining them, as no one else seemed to take any notice of them." "Nay, nay," said the Elfhelm. "The enemy is on the road, not in the hills. You hear the wozes, the wild men of the woods, thus they talk together from afar. They still haunt Druadan forest, it is said. Remnants of an older time they be, living few and secretly, wild and wary as the beasts. They go not to war with Gondor or the Mark, but now they are troubled by the darkness and the coming of the orcs. They fear lest the dark years be returning, as seems likely enough. Let us be thankful that they are not hunting us, for they use poisoned arrows, it is said, and they are woodcrafty beyond compare, but they have offered their services to Theoden. Even now one of their headmen is being taken to the king. Yonder go the lights. So much I have heard, but no more. And now I must busy myself with my lord's commands. Pack yourself up, Master Bag." He vanished into the shadows. Merry did not like this talk of wild men and poisoned darts, but quite apart from that, a great weight of dread was on him. Waiting was unbearable. He longed to know what was going to happen. He got up and soon was walking warily in pursuit of the last lantern before it disappeared among the trees. Presently he came to an open space where a small tent had been set up for the king under the great tree. A large lantern covered above was hanging from a bough and cast a pale circle of light below. There sat Theoden and Eomer, and before them on the ground sat a strange squat shape of a man, gnarled as an old stone, and the hairs of his scanty beard straggled on his lumpy chin like dry moss. He was short-legged and fat-armed, thick and stumpy, and clad only with grass about his waist. Merry felt that he had seen him before somewhere, and suddenly he remembered the Pukul men of Dunharrow. Here was one of those old images brought to life, or maybe a creature descended in true line through endless years from the models used by the forgotten craftsmen long ago. There was a silence as Merry crept nearer, and then the wild man began to speak, in answer to some question, it seemed. His voice was deep and guttural, yet to Merry's surprise he spoke the common speech, though in a halting fashion, and uncouth words were mingled with it. "No father of horsemen," he said. "We fight not, hunt only, kill Gorgon in woods, hate orc folk. You hate Gorgon too. We help as we can. Wild men have long ears and long eyes, know all paths. Wild men live here before stone houses, before tall men come up out of water." "But our need is for aid in battle," said Eomer. "How will you and your folk help us?" "Bring news," said the wild man. "We look out from hills. We climb big mountain and look down. Stone city is shut. Fire burns there outside. Now inside too. You wish to come there? Then you must be quick. But Gurgon and men out of far away," he waved a short gnarled arm eastward, "sit on horse road, very many more than horsemen." "How do you know that?" said Eomer. The old man's flat face and dark eyes showed nothing, but his voice was sullen with displeasure. "Wild men are wild, free, but not children," he answered. "I am great headman, Gahan Burigan. I count many things, stars in sky, leaves on trees, men in the dark. You have a score of scores counted 10 times and 5. They have more. Big fight, and who will win? And many more walk round walls of stone houses." "Alas, he speaks all too shrewdly," said Theoden, "and our scouts say that they have cast trenches and stakes across the road. We cannot sweep them away in sudden onset." "And we need great haste," said Eomer. "Munburg is on fire." "Let Gahan Burnigon finish," said the wild man. "More than one road he knows. He will lead you by road where no pits are, no Gorgon walk, only wild man and beasts. Many paths were made when Stonehouse folk were stronger. They carved hills as hunters carve beast flesh. Wild men think they ate stone for food. They went through Druadan and Rimmon with great wains. They go no longer. Road is forgotten, but not by wild men. Over hill and behind hill. It lies still under grass and tree. There behind Rimmon and down to Dean and back at the end to Horseman's Road. Wild men will show you that road. Then you will kill Gurgon and drive away bad dark with bright iron. And wild men can go back to sleep in the wild woods." Eomer and the king spoke together in their own tongue. At length Theoden turned to the wild man. "We will receive your offer," he said, for though we leave a host of foe behind, what matter? If the stone city falls, then we shall have no returning. If it is saved, then the orc host itself will be cut off. If you are faithful, Gon, then we will give you rich reward, and you shall have the friendship of the Mark forever." "Dead men are not friends to living men, and give them no gifts," said the wild man. "But if you live after the darkness, then leave wild men alone in the woods, and do not hunt them like beasts any more. Gon will not lead you into trap. He will go himself with father of horsemen, and if he leads you wrong, you will kill him." "So be it," said Theoden. "How long will it take to pass by the enemy and come back to the road?" asked Eomer. "We must go at foot pace if you guide us, and I doubt not the way is narrow." "Wild men go quick on foot," said Gon. "Way is wide for 4 horses in Stonewain Valley yonder." He waved his hand southward. "But narrow at beginning and at end. Wild man could walk from here to Dean between sunrise and noon." "Then we must allow at least 7 hours for the leaders," said Eomer. "But we must reckon rather on some 10 hours for all. Things unforeseen may hinder us, and if our host is all strung out, it will be long ere it can be set in order when we issue from the hills. What is the hour now?" "Who knows?" said Theoden. "All is night now." "It is all dark, but it is not all night," said Gon. "When sun comes, we feel her, even when she is hidden. Already she climbs over east mountains. It is the opening of day in the sky fields." "Then we must set out as soon as may be," said Eomer. "Even so, we cannot hope to come to Gondor's aid today." Merry waited to hear no more, but slipped away to get ready for the summons to the march. This was the last stage before the battle. It did not seem likely to him that many of them would survive it, but he thought of Pippin and the flames in Minas Tirith, and thrust down his own dread. All went well that day, and no sight or sound had they of the enemy waiting to waylay them. The wild men had put out a screen of wary hunters, so that no orc or roving spy should learn of the movements in the hills. The light was more dim than ever as they drew nearer to the beleaguered city, and the riders passed in long files like dark shadows of men and horses. Each company was guided by a wild woodman, but old Gahan walked beside the king. The start had been slower than was hoped, for it had taken some time for the riders, walking and leading their horses, to find paths over the thickly wooded ridges behind their camp and down into the hidden Stonewain Valley. It was late in the afternoon when the leaders came to wide grey thickets stretching beyond the eastward side of the Amundine, and masking a great gap in the line of hills that from Nardole to Dean ran east and west. Through the gap the forgotten Wain road long ago had run down, back into the main horseway from the city through Anorian, but now for many lives of men trees had their way with it, and it had vanished, broken and buried under the leaves of uncounted years. But the thickets offered to the riders their last hope of cover before they went up into open battle, for beyond them lay the road and the plains of Anduin, while east and southward the slopes were bare and rocky as the writhen hills gathered themselves together and climbed up, bastion upon bastion, into the great mass and shoulders of Mindoluin. The leading company was halted, and as those behind filed up out of the trough of Stonewain Valley, they spread out and passed to camping places under the grey trees. The king summoned the captains to council. Eomer sent out scouts to spy upon the road, but old Gahan shook his head. "No need to send horsemen," he said. "Wild men have already seen all that can be seen in the bad air. They will come soon and speak to me here." The captains came, and then out of the trees crept warily other pucal shapes. so like old Gahan that Mary could hardly tell them apart. They spoke to Gahan in strange throaty language. Presently Gahan turned to the king. Wild men say many things, he said. First, be wary. Still many men in camp beyond Dean, an hour's walk yonder. He waved his arm west toward the black beacon. But none to see between here and Stone Folk's new walls. Many busy there. Walls stand up no longer. Gurgon knock them down with earth thunder and with clubs and black iron. They are unwary and do not look about them. They think their friends watch all roads. At that, old Gahan made a curious gurgling noise, and it seemed that he was laughing. Good tidings, cried Eomer. Even in this gloom, hope gleams again. Our enemy's devices oft serve us in his despite. The accursed darkness itself has been a cloak to us, and now, lusting to destroy Gondor and throw it down stone from stone, his orcs have taken away my greatest fear. The outwall could have been held long against us. Now we can sweep through, if once we win so far. Once again, I thank you, Gahan Burigon of the woods, said Theoden. Good fortune go with you for tidings and for guidance. Kill Gurgon, kill orc folk. No other words, please, wild men, answered Gahan. Drive away bad air and darkness with bright iron. To do these things we have ridden far, said the king, and we shall attempt them, but what we shall achieve only tomorrow will show. Gahan Burigon squatted down and touched the earth with his horny brow in token of farewell. Then he got up as if to depart, but suddenly he stood looking up like some startled woodland animal snuffling a strange air. A light came in his eyes. Wind is changing, he cried, and with that, in a twinkling as it seemed, he and his fellows had vanished into the glooms, never to be seen by any rider of Rohan again. Not long after, far away eastward, the faint drums throbbed again. Yet to no heart in all the host came any fear that the wild men were unfaithful, strange and unlovely though they might appear. We need no further guidance, said Elfhelm, for there are riders in the host who have ridden down to Mundburg in days of peace, I for one. When we come to the road, it will veer south, and there will lie before us still 7 leagues ere we reach the wall of the townlands. Along most of that way there is much grass on either side of the road. On that stretch the errand riders of Gondor reckon to make their greatest speed. We may ride it swiftly and without great rumour. Then, since we must look for fell deeds and the need of all our strength, said Eomer, I counsel that we rest now, and set out hence by night, and so time our going, that we come upon the fields when tomorrow is as light as it will be, or when our Lord gives the signal. To this the king assented, and the captains departed, but soon Elfhelm returned. The scouts have found naught to report beyond the grey wood, Lord, he said, save 2 men only, 2 dead men and 2 dead horses. Well, said Eomer, what of it? This, Lord, they were errand riders of Gondor. Irgon was one, maybe. At least his hand still clasped the red arrow. But his head was hewn off, and this also. It would seem by the signs that they were fleeing westward when they fell. As I read it, they found the enemy already on the outwall or assailing it when they returned, and that would be 2 nights ago if they used fresh horses from the posts, as is their wont. They could not reach the city and turn back. Alas, said Theoden, then Denethor has heard no news of our riding, and will despair of our coming. Need brooks no delay, yet light is better than never, said Eomer, and mayhap in this time shall the old saw be proved truer than ever before since men spoke with mouth. It was night. On either side of the road, the host of Rohan was moving silently. Now the road passing about the skirts of Mindolluin turned southward. Far away and almost straight ahead, there was a red glow under the black sky, and the sides of the great mountain loomed dark against it. They were drawing near the Rammas of the Pelennor, but the day was not yet come. The king rode in the midst of the leading company, his household men about him. Elfhelm's Eored came next, and now Merry noticed that Durnhelm had left his place, and in the darkness was moving steadily forward until at last he was riding just in rear of the king's guard. Then came a check. Merry heard voices in front speaking softly. Outriders had come back who had ventured forward almost to the wall. They came to the king. "There are great fires, lord," said one. "The city is all set about with flame, and the field is full of foes, but all seem drawn off to the assault. As well as we could guess, there are few left upon the outwall, and they are heedless, busy in destruction." "Do you remember the wild man's words, lord?" said another. "I live upon the open wold in days of peace. Widfara is my name, and to me also the air brings messages. Already the wind is turning. There comes a breath out of the south. There is a sea tang in it, faint though it be. The morning will bring new things. Above the reek it will be dawn when you pass the wall. If you speak truly, Widfara, then may you live beyond this day in years of blessedness," said Theoden. He turned to the men of his household who were near, and he spoke now in a clear voice, so that many also of the riders of the first Eored heard him. "Now is the hour come, riders of the mark, sons of Eorl. Foes and fire are before you, and your homes far behind. Yet though you fight upon an alien field, the glory that you reap there shall be your own forever. Oaths ye have taken, now fulfill them all, to lord and land and league of friendship." Men clashed spear upon shield. "Eomer, my son, you lead the first Eored," said Theoden, "and it shall go behind the king's banner in the center. Elfhelm, lead your company to the right when we pass the wall, and Grimbold shall lead his toward the left. Let the other companies behind follow these three that lead, as they have chance. Strike whatever the enemy gathers. Other plans we cannot make, for we know not yet how things stand upon the field. Forth now, and fear no darkness." The leading company rode off as swiftly as they could, for it was still deep dark, whatever change Widfara might forebode. Merry was riding behind Durnhelm, clutching with the left hand, while with the other he tried to loosen his sword in its sheath. He felt now bitterly the truth of the old king's words. In such a battle, what would you do, Meriadoc? Just this, he thought, encumber a rider and hope at best to stay in my seat and not be pounded to death by galloping hoofs. It was no more than a league to where the outwalls had stood. They soon reached him, too soon for Merry. Wild cries broke out, and there was some clash of arms, but it was brief. The orcs busy about the walls were few and amazed, and they were quickly slain or driven off. Before the ruin of the north gate in the Rammas, the king halted again. The first Eored drew up behind him and about him on either side. Durnhelm kept close to the king, though Elfhelm's company was away on the right. Grimbold's men turned aside and passed round to a great gap in the wall further eastward. Merry peered from behind Durnhelm's back. Far away, many 10 miles or more, there was a great burning, but between it and the riders lines of fire blazed in a vast... Sorry, I lost my place. In a vast crescent at the nearest point less than a league distant. He could make out little more on the dark plain, and as yet he neither saw any hope of morning nor felt any wind, changed or unchanged. Now silently the host of Rohan moved forward into the field of Gondor, pouring in slowly but steadily like the rising tide through breaches in a dike that men have thought secure. But the mind and will of the Black Captain were bent wholly on the falling city, and as yet no tidings came to him warning that his designs held any flaw. After a while, the king led his men away somewhat eastward to come between the fires of the siege and the outer fields. Still they were unchallenged, and still Theoden gave no signal. At last he halted once again. The city was now nearer. A smell of burning was in the air, and a very shadow of death. The horses were uneasy, but the king sat upon Snowmane, motionless, gazing upon the agony of Minas Tirith, as if stricken suddenly by anguish or by dread. He seemed to shrink down, cowed by age. Merry himself felt as if a great weight of horror and doubt had settled on him. His heart beat slowly. Time seemed poised in uncertainty. They were too late. Too late was worse than never. Perhaps Theoden would quail, bow his old head, turn, slink away to hide in the hills. Then suddenly Merry felt it at last, beyond doubt, a change. Wind was in his face. Light was glimmering. Far, far away in the south, the clouds could be dimly seen as remote gray shapes rolling up, drifting. Morning lay beyond them. But at that same moment there was a flash as if lightning had sprung from the earth beneath the city. For a searing second it stood dazzling far off in black and white, its topmost tower like a glittering needle, and then, as the darkness closed again, there came rolling over the fields a great boom. At that sound the bent shape of the king sprang suddenly erect. Tall and proud he seemed again, and rising in his stirrups he cried in a loud voice, more clear than any there had ever heard a mortal man achieve before, "Arise! Arise, riders of Theoden! Fell deeds awake! Fire and slaughter! Spear shall be shaken, shield be splintered, a sword lay, a red day ere the sun rises. Ride now, ride now, ride to Gondor." With that he seized a great horn from the Guthlaf, his banner-bearer, and he blew such a blast upon it that it burst asunder, and straightway all the horns in the host were lifted up in music, and the blowing of the horns of Rohan in that hour was like a storm upon the plain and a thunder in the mountains. "Ride now, ride now, ride to Gondor." Suddenly the king cried to Snowmane, and the horse sprang away. Behind him his banner blew in the wind, white horse upon a field of green, but he outpaced it. After him thundered the knights of his house, but he was ever before them. Eomer rode there, the white horsetail on his helm floating in his speed, and the front of the first Eored roared like a breaker foaming to the shore. But Theoden could not be overtaken. Fey, he seemed, or the battle fury of his fathers ran like new fire in his veins, and he was borne up on Snowmane like a god of old, even as Orome the Great in the battle of the Valar when the world was young. His golden shield was uncovered, and lo, it shone like the image of the sun, and the grass flamed into green about the white feet of his steed. For morning came, morning, and a wind from the sea, and darkness was removed, and the hosts of Mordor wailed, and terror took them, and they fled and died, and the hoofs of wrath rode over them, and then all the host of Rohan burst into song, and they sang as they slew, for the joy of battle was on them, and the sound of their singing was fair, and terrible came even to the city. That is the end of chapter 5. Chapter 6 is called The Battle of the Pelennor Fields, and the first word is the conjunction but. And
How long is this chapter?
that is where we will close it for this evening. And I hope that you're enjoying the story. I hope that you want to read on.
Yes.
Yeah,
Stop tonight.
I know everybody wants me to read on, but I'm going to pace it out just like we've been doing. And I know some of these chapters are kind of short, but we're going to stop there for the evening. And we did start a little late, so it's only fair. And God bless you. I hope you're enjoying the reading. Have a good night.